That's a nice line that you've given us. Niti Aayog is the IIT for India, and I can see many will probably go with that headline tomorrow. It's a quotable quote there, Mr. Subramanyam. But I'll come back to you on the importance of the digital goods aspect that you spoke of and what we can now expect in the next phase of growth. But let me get to Dilip Aspi of NPCI. And before I get to you, Dilip, let me do a quick poll here of the audience. How many people here use UPI? Literally everybody in this room. Dilip, that should be a big smile to your face.
Who didn't raise the hand, actually?
Who doesn't use UPI?
Yeah.
That's one solitary gentleman in the room,
yeah.
and okay, three people in this room who don't use UPI. So, well, the house is on your side, Dilip. But let me start by talking to you about something that has captured the headlines overnight, and I know you've spent a large part of your day clarifying that. What is the reason behind the charges that you've brought in? I know you've clarified that these charges don't impact you and me, i.e. the consumer. It is at the merchant's end that the charge applies. But explain to me the reason behind this, and I'll also tell you the fear in the mind of the customer, that this is only the start, that this is the start of charges being imposed on consumers for using UPI. The other fear is, look, consumer will have to pay one way or the other. The merchant will, in a way, get the consumer to pay. So I want you to clarify on the rationale behind these charges and whether this could lead to more such kind of charges.
So first of all, Shireen, there are two entities which are actually taking part in the merchant payments. One is the customer and second is the merchant. And obviously there is a P2M, which is person to merchant and person to person transactions in UPI or any other payment system. So one thing is very clear, that customer never pays for any payment transaction, right? Whether it's a peer-to-peer or peer-to-merchant. Always merchant as a user of the payment system pays the nominal reasonable charges for the payment system. So that's the first principle. The second point is the UPI for the bank account, using the bank account is already free with the government notification. And again, if there is a review, if there is a change, again the government will have to decide on the next course on that. The notification which we issued was pertaining to the prepaid wallets, right? Yeah. Because with the RBI guideline, the wallets are now interoperable, and while they were already operating on the cards, they were not permitted in UPI. So to permit them in UPI, the interchange was permitted. So that's, I think, a nutshell clarified situation. Again, there as well, only the merchant pays, the consumer doesn't pay anything.
You've made that amply clear, not just here on the Rising India stage, but even in the NPCI press release that came out this morning, clarifying that the consumer doesn't need to pay. Yeah. But the larger question is, Dilip, when we're talking about moving to 1 billion transactions, which is what the aspiration is for you. You're anticipating a 10x growth from here by 2030. Someone's got to pay. Yeah. Who is going to invest? Where do you get the money from?
So again, it's a great question. And, today as we stand, you rightly said, the near-term goal, which is next 2 years to 3 years, we are looking at 1 billion transactions. We are at 30 crore on a daily basis. The peak transaction.
That does deserve a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. 30 crore transactions.
And it's all made in India, operated by India for the citizens. I think it's a great beginning, I must say that. It's not the end. We still have to grow 10x. So I think when we look at 1 billion a day or 10x growth, which is the 3 billion per day, which is the true potential of India, you're right. I think we need money. We need investments both on the customer side, because there are 600 million eligible customers who can actually come inside the digital payments who are outside today. There are another 100 million merchants who are outside the digital payments who can come inside. So I think it is going to need money. As on date, the government is kind of giving the digital payment incentive to the ecosystem, and there is a dialogue with the ecosystem and the government, the stakeholders, that how do we grow UPI to 10x now, and how do we ensure that the awareness, education, the whole consumer and merchant onboarding for the large number takes place. Even if we don't do anything, Sharon, it will happen in next 10 to 15 years time. Now the question is, can we do this by 2030? I think that's the question which we are looking at, and I think it's an issue which is under discussion. So let's see how it progresses. As of now, the government is paying the incentives, and ecosystem is still trying to look at with a very positive outlook that we need more investments. Banks, fintechs, everybody.
That is the reality. We need more investments. If the consumer is not going to pay, who does, Mr. Subramanyam?
I'd like to add a point. I think everybody remembers flying in India was supposed to be a rich man's fancy. And you remember Captain Gopinath came with Deccan Aviation, and then he said, we'll sell tickets for 1 rupee. It changed people's mindsets. Today, everybody thinks of flying as an alternative to railways, irrespective of what their income levels are. I think the same thing with UPI. In the initial years, you need to promote, you need to see that it becomes a habit. And then once the ecosystem is large enough, and large enough not just domestically, but that you're able to compete globally, because there are alternative payment systems, you should be able to be strong enough to take them on. At that point, one can think of other ways, but in the initial years, all technologies need to be sustained with some degree of support.
Yes, that support, as you put it, is understood. But you talked about the global aspiration. Let me get each one of you to comment on that. And Dilip, I'll start by asking you. The plans to globalize UPI, an initial beginning has been made with the pact that's been struck with Singapore and India. I know that you believe that this could be the model, this could be the template for what we could do with other countries. What's the appetite? You are going to be speaking, Dilip is on his way to the G20 Sherpa meeting in Kumarakom. He's going to be speaking there. This is one of the priorities that the Indian government has set out as part of the G20 presidency. I mean, how quickly do you believe UPI can truly globalize?
So, Shireen, the Prime Minister's vision and again the government, RBI, all are working towards the way India is self-sufficient on the payments for the domestically. I think next 10 to 20 years time, a long vision is to be self-sufficient on the cross-border pipes as well. And it's a time-consuming process, but the beginning has been made with the Singapore-India corridor. I think in 30 seconds, one country's bank account can be debited and another country's bank account can be credited with all forex conversions, the compliances, the checks, AML, all CFT. I think the Singapore model has given that confidence to the world, in my assessment, that in 30 seconds, two bank accounts in two different countries can transact. I think this is just a beginning, and the RBI, the MEA, the government is also helping us to reach out to the other central banks and their agencies to create this cross-border pipes. It's a long journey, but I think everybody is committed to make this happen. We'll have to look at an investment approach, right? Because the transaction will take longer time to pick up to the level what you're looking at. But I think the outlook is outstanding. $100 billion remittance we get on a yearly basis. Plus we have a huge travel now outbound from India. So I think it's a great story. We'll have to keep doing this.
So in the next 5 years, what would you believe we could, where